to accept the offer of, or whether to recommend to the Board of Supervisors that the county accept the offer of technical assistance, free technical assistance from the CDRPC. Hi, Tara. For engaging in a climate adaptation and resilience plan. And we provided some documents, background documents about the process, what that entails, a little bit more about what this plan would do. And I wanted to now open up the conversation for discussion.
I think it's wonderful. I'm grateful for the CDRPC for offering this. This is something the town of New Lebanon's been looking to do, and our Climate Smart Task Force has been working on it, but to have some professional guidance to help us through the process, I know my town would certainly take advantage of this opportunity.
Great, and I know that's the case for, I can't speak for the town of Ghent, but for our task force, we're having a meeting tonight, and depending on what happens today, I'll raise that with them, and I'm sure that the sentiment would be similar. Participation from our town.
Yes, I mean, I haven't spoken to our committee here in Germantown yet, but we're also working on a resilience plan, and so I'm sure that the group would be all in on the county plan as well. So I am curious as to know what our duties will be, but we can get into the weeds with that later.
Tara, do you want to speak to that? You probably have the best perspective on what the expectations we might have on how the task force and the towns, participating towns, will need to be involved.
Right. So as far as the county goes, it's a matter of having a task force for this climate resiliency plan. So it can be this task force, or it can be another committee that, you know, of others that want to participate. It should include somebody from each of the towns that is participating. So if, you know, if the town is not on this task force, then they would need to be on it. So it may be a separate task force. That's entirely up to you how you want to structure that. As far as the towns and their involvement in the process, they would each need a representative, obviously, to be a part of this process. They ideally would need to obviously bring, you know, and report back to their committee or their board, depending on the structure and the individual towns. They'll also need to adopt a resolution, just like the county is being asked to do, which, you know, we can provide once the county is signed on board with this. So yeah, and I mean, most of the work, just like with the county, is going to be done by Cornell Cooperative Extension. So it's just a matter of some data gathering and some general input, just like a you know, kind of advisory committee would provide.
Tara, can you elaborate at all on what data gathering or other information might entail?
Yeah, so I talked to Wendy about this the other day. It's going to be very similar to what you'd be doing with the hazard mitigation planning. So there's just going to need to be some data from the county. Extension already has a lot of this data. I'm sure the planning department also has a lot of this data already. There was a previous hazard mitigation plan. Detail of what that's going to look like, I'm not quite sure yet. Cornell will have to provide more of the you know, exact details of what data will be gathered, but I do think a lot of it is already there. It shouldn't be too difficult. Between the HMP and you know, the county planning office and some of the other things that have already been done, the NRI, there's going to be a ton of you know, available data, I think, for this plan.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you, Tara. Kara.
Hi, yeah, thanks. So the town of Austerlitz, or the Climate Smart Committee, is actually full speed ahead on a CAP and preparing a resolution. So I'm just curious, our next meeting is next week. How is what the county doing different from what our town is doing? And how can we, you know, how can I best articulate to my town what the county is doing and how that's different?
Tara, do you want to address that?
Sure,
Thank you.
sure. So I'm not sure exactly what Austerlitz is working on because Haley's working with you, but we're going to have some better messaging for the towns that want to be a part of this once the county signs on board. There'll be kind of a formal process where we're asking each town to kind of adopt a resolution and, you know, kind of get on the train because we want to make sure this is moving forward all at the same time. So I don't have that quite yet, but if you guys are working on a separate resiliency plan, which I'm not sure if you're doing, we have to think about how that aligns with this county plan and how we would kind of mesh those efforts.
Yeah, because certainly there's some points that are required when you do a CAP, right? For government,
Mhm.
and then community was kind of next on the horizon for us. So I'm just curious, like if the town of Austerlitz was to join up with the county, would we be able to receive the same points per se as
Yes.
if we were doing it solo?
Yes, absolutely. And I think you're talking about a climate action plan, which is going to be the
Oh, okay.
mitigation side, whereas
Right.
this situation is just climate resiliency or adaptation planning, which is just kind of the resiliency side of things. So communities can be undertaking climate action plans entirely independent of this process, and that shouldn't overlap. But as far as the points go, that's the idea of just like the towns getting points for this. Any town that participates in this county process will be able to get points for the Climate Smart program. That we're going to set it up that way, and being funded by the DEC, they want us to make sure that you know is an approvable plan by them.
Got it. Thanks, Tara.
Tistria.
Yeah, I would love to hear from Patrice and Wendy. The data gathering, it sounds like, is going to fall under the planning department, and Wendy as the coordinator, just to see if they have any questions or comments. I just wanted to hear from them if they wanted to speak on it at all.
Well, I still have a ton of questions, even after looking at the information, because I'm like the details on the process of completing the plan, and even prior to completing the plan, how it's set up, how we identify the municipalities that would participate, what their roles would be, and also what the role of the individual county departments, the cooperative extension, the task force, and the towns and the board of supervisors, that the roles of all those different groups that would have to be involved with this. I'm not clear on what the responsibilities would be. And also the time frame of this, I'm not really clear on that either. And also, I still have questions about coordination with the hazard mitigation plan. Some of this that's being updated currently. So how that meshes, I still have questions about how that occurs and how the two groups work together, or if there needs to be some sort of bridge between the two. Also, like the county departments that would be involved, it sounds like you were going to be relying on the planning department for a significant amount of data. So we're a really small department. There were only 3 people. So I also would like a clearer idea and outline of the types of information you expect that we have to produce in order to complete the plan or even embark upon the plan. And I also, there was a question that's popped up now about the different types of plans, where Austerlitz is developing the one type of plan and the county would be doing another, and how those two would work together. I'm not clear on any of that. So there are a lot of my questions. They're not finite, and I know there probably will change over time. And the other thing is the scope. When I read through the step-by-step process to complete the plan, there were a lot of you could do pick from this list, pick from that list. So how we would identify the scoping plan and at the onset so that the Board of Supervisors would have a clear understanding of what this entailed and what the impacts would be, both with manpower and fiscally for the county to complete any of the actions identified within the plan, and how those timeframes would be identified. What role would the Board of Supervisors have in that process? So I have probably a lot more questions, but these are the few that I came up with just in reviewing the information and the time frame that I had.
Thank you, Patrice. One clarification, which can take one of those questions off the table, perhaps, and there's a lot of really important, I think, information to address your questions that needs to be gathered. Those are all really important questions. So thank you. But the town of Austerlitz is doing it sounds like a climate action plan, which follows on a greenhouse gas inventory where you then look at what actions we're going to take to mitigate emissions, right? That's distinct from this, which is the climate adaptation plan, which is dealing with how to create resilience, identify vulnerabilities, and come up with adaptation strategies. So this is distinct from what we're proposing here, or what we're considering here, rather, is distinct from what it sounds like Austerlitz is doing. We would like the county to do an action plan at some point. We're not talking about that right now. So just on that one question, I think if Austerlitz says, oh yeah, or any other town, we would like to, we are interested in this. We'd like to put a person, on this task force. We'd like to participate as a town and contribute resources and time to addressing issues in our town as part of a broader strategy. I think that's the general idea as to how this would work. In terms of how we would identify the towns, we would invite every town to participate. And we wouldn't exclude a town based on whether or not they're part of a climate smart task force or they have a task force. They could participate even without getting points, obviously, without being part of the program. The more participation, the better, because it provides assets or resources in each town, obviously, and more buy-in from the towns. So I think we would put if this is approved, we would put a call out to every town to make sure they're aware of this process and give them the opportunity, answer their questions, address their concerns, and give them an opportunity to choose to participate. There are a lot more questions that you raised. Brenda has her hand up and Wendy as well, but I hope that helps a little bit.
So do I remember from the prior conversation that we would put out an appeal to all the towns, but I think, Tara, did we say we were looking for 8 to 10 towns, that would be a critical mass?
I think
So we might.
7 is the minimum we're looking to
Okay,
see.
and is there a maximum?
No, there's no maximum. We could do every community in the county. That would be awesome if they wanted to, but we'll see where it lands.
So Patrice, I really appreciate your bringing up the resource issue, because it seems to me that if we have these towns grouped together, that we can do this more efficiently. I mean, each of them can certainly do this independently, and because this is one of the activity that gets points for towns. I know our task force is looking at this as well, but it seems to me if we could standardize the information in terms of the choices and do it at one point in time instead of doing it continuously over many months, it might be less of a drain on resources. I like any efficiencies associated with climate smart, meetings, gas, people's time, whatever. I think there's an opportunity for that.
And a desire I've heard from many towns to help for the county our task force for our effort to help coordinate and streamline and create some of those efficiencies. Wendy.
Actually, Dave, it's Jolene. Tara, I just have some quick questions. I noticed looking over the literature yesterday that Tompkins County and Orange County is in the process of doing their plans. Do you have contacts that we could reach out to the counties just to speak to someone so that we could get a better idea? Some follow-up actually to Patrice's questions about resources and departments that are involved, just so that we could prepare a little bit more on our end. And also, do you have a contact for Cornell that we could reach out and just kind of get, some more detailed information regarding, timelines and just what they're kind of looking for?
Yeah, absolutely. I can connect you with Connor, who's the head of their, I can't remember his title. He's like the director of their environmental program at Cornell Columbia Green, who's going to be heading up this effort. It may be some of his staff that's working on the technical actual planning process, but he's going to be the best point of contact. So I'll connect you with him. And then as far as Orange and Tompkins counties go, I can certainly find a contact there for you.
Okay.
I'm not sure that they're going through the exact process because they're, not using this DEC grant. So I don't know what contractor they hired to do their climate resiliency plan and, basically, what that process is, but they will certainly, I'm sure, have good information for you as far as the data that was required for that process. So.
Awesome. That would be really helpful. Thank you.
But just as a clarification, if towns do this individually, the planning department would be required to provide that information anyway, right? Because that would be the source of the data. So if each of the towns, if the county didn't move ahead and each of the towns did this individually, they would each have to go to the planning department for the same information. Is that correct?
I'm not sure exactly where your data lies in the county, so I can't answer that question very
But we
well.
think it's most likely with the planning department and with Cornell. Okay.
And existing resources like the natural resource inventory and the hazard mitigation plan and other existing resources. Tistria.
Yeah, thank you so much. I really appreciate Patrice and Jolene because I want to acknowledge too that, as a county, we are short-staffed and I want this to happen for all the towns. I think it's one of the intentions of the county having a task force. One of our main intentions is to support towns who want to do things. Again, I love the idea that whether they have a task force or not, they can participate in this. And like I said, for New Lebanon, it's something we've been not struggling on, but working on, hoping for resources and assistance. So I just wanted a little bit of clarification. I am glad that, Tara, you're going to connect Patrice and Jolene, with some, I think they want to understand what type of time commitment is my department, getting into with this, which I think is a valid question/concern. But my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, is let's just say every town in the county wanted to do this. I doubt we'll get every town, but let's say we did. We're going to do a lot of the heavy lifting, and it sounds like what we're going to be looking at for the county, which, like Brenda said, even if New Lebanon did it on our own, I'd probably still be reaching out to Patrice and to Cornell to say, hey, you have this data for New Lebanon. It is mostly like helping us access data that they already have. We're not going to them to recreate the wheel or do, it's more, hey, you have this data. How do we access it? Can we access it? That's kind of the gist I'm hearing, is that the committee, which can be comprised of some county members, and of course, if Jolene or Patrice want to serve on the committee, they could, but really a town rep from each town participating. And am I understanding that it's a town thing, but also a county thing, but really what we're relying on the county for is more an access to data that they probably have already? Is that an accurate?
Yeah, that sounds right. And the county's not going to be asked to produce maps or things like that. That if there's new maps that are needed for this, that's all going to be extension that's going to be doing that as part of their paid for services. It'll just be maybe some data that they don't have that the county has. So as far as the heavy lift goes, all of that's going to fall on extension.
Awesome. Thank you.
Okay. Wendy or Jolene.
No, it's me. Tara, I have a quick question. If we cannot acquire at least 7 towns, I mean, right now, I wrote down 5 of who are on this call that are interested, but if we don't have the minimum of 7, is this deal off the table then, correct?
No. No,
Okay.
we can still move forward. I do
Which-
feel pretty confident that it's going to be 7. So,
Okay.
but if it's not, if it's like 6 or 5, then there's no issue in moving forward.
Okay, thank you.
Kara?
Yeah, Wendy, which towns again do you have?
Sure, so I know that Tistria said that New Lebanon, David said that he's gonna speak with Ghent, and I know that Ghent's very active, so that probably, I think that they'll go ahead with that. Correct, David?
Yeah.
Yeah. Matthew with the town of Germantown said they're working on a plan. I know the town of Austerlitz, you're working on CAP, Carl.
Correct. Yeah, that was my mistake.
Okay, so.
But I know that, we have a coordinator, so I'm sure that Austerlitz will be in, and I would venture to guess that Chatham, who now has Deborah, going to be, Chatham received a grant from the local champions.
Okay,
So Deborah will be doing, and so they're looking to really get involved in a lot of stuff.
okay, and then Supervisor Adams also said that the town of Canaan was looking into doing this already, so, if all of the towns, that's 6 right now, so.
Yeah.
And that's without doing any outreach.
And
Right.
Valencia has
And we might have a 7th. Michael, are you?
Yeah,
Hudson?
the city of Hudson will definitely participate, I'm sure.
Yeah, great. That would be key.
Which is ideal, yeah.
and Valatia and Hillsdale and Claverick all have a lot of activity. Their Hillsdale is Howard Van Letten is getting involved, and of course John Bradley from Claverick. I'm sure that they would be game to help and be involved.
Yeah, I think the ideal, we put a call out to these towns. Obviously, we have a lot of contacts and we know where to start, but we put a call out to every town and we go through whatever other channels to communicate to the towns, like conservation advisory committees and whatnot, if they don't have a climate smart task force. And once we've done that, then we can recruit whoever's participating that comprise those people, the official from each town or a representative from each town. Will help us comprise this committee, subcommittee, sub-task force, whatever it might be, so that work, has additional resources. It's not just the responsibility of this task force and Wendy, but we have additional resources from each town to come together and do whatever work is needed. That's how I'm envisioning that part of the process. Matthew.
Yes, thank you for pointing out the differences between the climate action plan and climate resilience. So I was wrong. I mean, Germantown doesn't have a climate action plan yet, but we are working on the resilience aspect of it with our culverts and dams. But either way, I'm sure our committee is going to be down for it. I also just want to say, I don't know what capacity in terms of data collection for, to take the heavy lift off, whatever Jolene and Wendy and Patrice, whatever you need. I don't know if we're allowed as non-county employees to help with that. I think there are probably members of this task force and maybe even Germantown who might join the task force later in the year that would be able to help with that, because I think this is one of the most important tasks that we've and an opportunity. So whatever you all need, I want you to know that Germantown will support that, and it won't be all you. So I just want to put that out there.
It sounds like I want to get a sense of the group on. There's two kind of issues. One is, do we think this is important? Do we want to work on this? Is this an opportunity we would like to work on, or we'd like the county to work on? And getting a sense of that first, so we can then focus on, okay, how do we do it? How do we address Patrice's questions and very real concerns? And how do we best create a process which can work moving forward? So on the first question, does anyone have concerns or hesitation as to the benefits, or questions about, whether the benefits are worth it for engaging in this type of thing under these circumstances, given the resources that are being offered to us?
I support it 100%.
Because if this is the opportunity, if anyone has concerns, to raise those before we get to the kind of, okay, then how do we do it in a way that makes sense?
Well, this is a process I think that we're going to need to go through as we are confronted over time with the effects of climate. So better to do it sooner than later, and with assistance is always better than without. So I think we ought to go ahead with accepting the kind offer while we have it in hand.
Okay, so I don't hear any other, Wendy or Patrice. I'm sorry, or Jolene.
It's okay. I guess the only concern that I have is not fully understanding yet what the end result is going to be or how we're going to get there. I guess I'm kind of spitting off Patrice's. Normally, when we do these plans, we have a pretty set itinerary of what is expected of us and what direction we're going into. So I guess just from my standpoint, it's just a little different because we have never ventured into something that we're not quite sure what we're going to be addressing and what the benefits are going to be. I don't know if that makes sense to any of you, but being in the government world, and I know I say that a lot, it's a lot different for us. So that's, I guess from my standpoint, I just need to do a little bit more research, and by reaching out to Cornell and to these individuals, they probably will be able to answer my questions.
Can I ask
Tara? Hey, sorry, Kistria. Tara, can you just give, I know we spoke about it yesterday and you did a great job explaining the actual, what this actually is. Can you just do another just general overview of what exactly this plan is when it's finished, like the finished document, what it is and what it's providing for us?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, so the climate resiliency plan is going to look at, and it's actually going to include a vulnerability assessment as well, because that's a big piece of this, is just trying to figure out where the county is vulnerable. So what watersheds are vulnerable, what sea level rise is going to look like with scenario planning. So that's where the data is going to come from, is to figure out where what the county looks like and where we need to kind of beef up your resources. The planning piece, of course, is what is the plan? So where are you going to go? How are you going to? What is the timeline for those resources? So a lot of this, again, is going to overlap with the HMP, but there may be more to it because it's going to be a lot more climate specific, as far as projections go and things like that. I think that the benefits of this plan are, potential for funding in the future. You're going to be set up to request that funding with having a plan in your back pocket when you're requesting for projects and things like that need to be implemented, that you're kind of suggesting as part of this plan. So think of it in that way, as you would like an HMP or, just like FEMA requires, or as a comprehensive plan. And it's just a way to kind of justify your actions in the future. So what you'll have as an end result, I'm not sure kind of the length of this plan is, maps of vulnerability, an understanding of what needs to be upgraded and where you're going to go in the future for any of these issues. So not focusing at all on what was being discussed that Austerlitz is working on, which is mitigation, which is how we're going to reduce greenhouse gases and where we're going to go with that. That's entirely separate. This is strictly, what are the issues we're facing, assuming climate change is happening, and it's, here's what the projections are that science is telling us and where we're going to go to kind of fix these issues.
Tara, it would be great if you could send us an example, the best example you have of a plan that's been done recently.
Okay.
That would be great. I think that would help everyone understand the kind of contents and the components of this. But, we have infrastructure, human impact of volatile weather, a lot of land and agricultural impacts. There's a lot of vulnerability across a lot of those sectors that I don't think have been fully addressed. I think probably the kind of culvert infrastructure, flooding, some of those things have probably been most considered because they are traditionally what you look at in these situations. But there's a lot more that this would bring to the table. When it doesn't rain for 5 weeks and then it rains 3 inches, what does that do to not only our culverts, but to our land, to our fields, to our farms? And how do we prepare as farmers or landowners? We have a lot of that here. How do we prepare to be resilient? That's a whole area that I don't think has been very well explored in any of these plans. So there's an opportunity to get into things like that. I'm not saying that would be the top priority, but it's one of many issues that I think are out there that really we could help people out by having putting a lot more thought and preparing. Both Tistria and Brenda, I don't know who's first.
Tistria.
Yeah, so I just want to acknowledge again, Jolene and Patrice have some great questions and great points, but it does also sound like Cornell Cooperative is really going to be, I heard Jolene say, normally we have like a work plan and an itinerary. And I think really that heavy lifting is going to be done by Cornell. And I look forward to hearing the outcome of Jolene's conversation with them. But it sounds to me like we are really they are going to look to us to provide data that we already have. And then they are going to be the ones with the work plan and the itinerary working with the committee. And so I also acknowledge that this won't hit full board until August. So I recommend that this committee moves forward the recommendation to county government to move forward with this agreement with Cornell. And then between now and then, if Jolene talks to Cornell and finds out, the workload's going to be much different or much bigger or much larger, then we can certainly have another conversation. And Jolene, I will tell you as a supervisor who will vote not on county government, I'm not on that committee, but at the full board, if all of a sudden we find out that it's a much heavier lift for your department and you either need extra support or you need us to hold off a minute, then I certainly would ask for that resolution to be tabled. I don't think that's going to be the case, and I understand that we don't like to, rush through things, and I get all that, but I do feel that, because of how slow the government process works with the committees and then the full board, it's really more than a month from now that it comes to a full vote. And I can give you my word, Jolene and Patrice, that if all of a sudden there's a wrench in the system that we didn't know after you have the chance to talk to Cornell and others, I'll be the first one to request that it get pulled and tabled so that we have more time. I don't think that's going to be the case, but just to kind of give you that assurance that, I want you to be able to get your questions answered and have those conversations. But I would like to see this committee move it forward to county government, who hopefully will pass it through. And then that also gives time for more conversation.
I have Brenda, I know you're next. I have a draft resolution we can look at if and when we're ready to do that.
So I just, I don't want to sound cynical, but as a almost 20-year veteran of elected office, I would say that I really learned the benefits of being proactive, of doing this kind of work before it's required by a state agency or another agency to do it. I mean, I really hate to see this come down the road in 2 years or 3 years as an unfunded mandate, and then we all have to scramble to do this work. And I like the idea of not, planning ahead and getting the work done in a timely way. I love the idea of having the fact that we can include as many towns as possible so we can do the work efficiently, but also that the state will now have a model that they can share with other towns and other counties that will allow them to learn and benefit from the work that we're doing. But I think the most important part of this is I love the fact that we can be partially funded, that we have this funding support to do it, and we have good, strong partners. And I think it's really important that when these funding or grant opportunities come forward, that we're in a position to be on the front end of those requests, because they come and go. And if we have our plan, we're ready to go and apply for money. So, but I can very much see this coming down the road as an unfunded mandate in the future. And I'd prefer to be able to work at a good, solid pace with support and to do a good plan well and to do it early.
Thank you. And one thing to keep in mind, I mean, I think we all know, we have no authority other than as an advisory body. What we're considering today is not a commitment from the county, as Tistria said, to do this, but to move the process forward so that the county government, the Board of Supervisors, informed by the additional information we need to gather, we've asked for from Tara, that we have conversations that need to happen in the next month or so. Informed by that extra information, the county can decide whether to move forward with this opportunity and not miss it. Denal.
Yeah, I'd definitely be willing to move forward on this, but I agree with Tistria, as long as it's not unduly burdensome to Patrice or Jolene's departments. So hopefully they can find that out very soon. I just have a question for Tara. If we move ahead with this, you know, obviously as a municipal supervisor, what can I do to bring our committee in parallel here to what's going on right now with the county? And
Sure.
what's the overall timeline that we're looking at for
Yeah.
municipal participation within the county participation?
Yeah, I think as soon as a timeline is established of whether or not this is going to be adopted by the county, I think once we feel confident that the county is on board, we'll start with outreach to the towns, and we can help either this task force or we can do some individual outreach between Haley and myself. Many of you work with Haley Belkanoff instead of me, to kind of explain this to each of our committees that we work with or to the town. So you know that I work with Chatham, of course, so I'll be in touch with you, Janelle, and you know the committee to kind of explain this a little bit further and bring the resolution to you guys to be adopted. So
Terrific, thank you.
Yeah.
And yeah, like you said, we did receive a local champions, but I believe Bill Mancini, who's on this call, also received that. So before I mute myself, a round of applause for Bill as well.
Yeah, and so deserved. That was a good choice. Wish we all had
Congrats.
Bill Mancini in our pockets, you know, in our towns, working like he does.
And I
That's
think
great.
Philmont also received, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, that program is definitely having an impact. So that's great. More people informed and educated in how to work this process. It's really great. And do these
David.
projects. Yeah.
I have a quick question. I have to jump off, and I know we already lost Steve. I'd like to move a resolution if you have one prepared.
Yeah. Let me just see if I can pull
Was
this.
it included in the distribution packet?
No, I'm sorry. I'm last minute Dave. Just trying to do my best to keep up with the workload. Let me just see about, I'll read it to folks. We can pass something more simple as well. Oh, can't share my screen. Whoops, I need permission. I can also read it. In the meantime, I know we're running out of time. It's basically a draft based on what had been presented to us for the county to consider passing. A resolution to undertake a Columbia County vulnerability assessment and climate adaptation plan. Whereas Columbia County pledged to take part in the New York State DEC Climate Smart Community Certification Program that includes the preparation of a vulnerability assessment and climate adaptation plan. And whereas free technical assistance is available to support the development of these documents from Cornell Cooperative Extension on behalf of the Capital District Regional Planning Commission through a New York State DEC Climate Smart Communities Coordinator Services contract. And whereas the Climate Smart Task Force, comprised of municipal officials and environmental volunteer community leaders, will collaborate with CDRPC in the development of these publications, review drafts, and provide valuable feedback on iterations that result in a final draft. And whereas the task force will provide an opportunity for every municipality in the county to formally participate in the planning to create efficiencies, reduce redundancies, and increase coordination across the county. And whereas the task force will provide an opportunity for public input and comment on the draft report. And whereas the task force will present a summary of the vulnerability results and adaptation plan to the County Board of Supervisors for consideration of adoption. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the task force hereby recommends that the county accept the technical assistance being offered by CDRPC to develop a vulnerability assessment and climate adaptation plan and to submit the plan and associated documents to the New York State DEC Office for Climate Change for consideration of points toward climate smart community certification for the county.
I will move that resolution.
I'll second.
Great. All in favor?
Aye.
I can't vote yes right now until I have some answers to the questions. I apologize, but I really need some assurances and some answers to some of the questions. And I don't feel that I was given enough information. I understand that I'm only one vote and you guys could vote to, it could go forward and I'd be responsible to do all of the work regardless, but I don't know that there is a detriment to waiting until the next meeting to get so that I'm afforded the opportunity to get some more information. But that's, you know, I'm only one vote, so that's how I feel about it at this point. I don't have answers to the questions. We're going to be relied upon significantly for this plan. And I would like to have some more information about our role and the amount of time it would take.
Totally understandable.
Vote,
So you vote no, right? And were there any other no votes?
I was muted. I voted yes. Aye.
Okay. Any other no votes? Just so we have it documented. Well, I mean, Patrice, I hear you, and I personally, I understand where you're coming from. I hope that this did pass, as you just witnessed, but I hope that our conversation before was reassuring that we are basically by endorsing this, saying we would like to consider it. We'd like the county to consider it. We are recommending that the county move forward. But as Tistria pointed out, there's information that will be gathered between now and then, and that will inform the county's ultimate decision. So hopefully this doesn't, this just creates some urgency to move it forward and not table it, but also gives an opportunity to gather that information and to whatever extent we can, for example, getting a copy of a plan, an example plan, and going through it and having a conversation to talk it through, if that's helpful, or any other way that we can be helpful. We understand that a lot of this will fall on your office, regardless of how much we want to help. But to whatever extent we can actually be helpful, having conversations, setting up calls with other counties, we are ready. I know I personally am ready, willing, and able to do that, and happy to help if that is helpful for you.
And David, if I could just reiterate, especially to Patrice and Jolene, as a supervisor, I will ask for it to be tabled at full board in August if you don't have the answers that you need at that point. And I hope that Tara can connect Patrice and Jolene with both Cornell and other counties that have done similar work as soon as possible to get those questions answered. And if we come to that full board meeting, if it passes county government and we come to that full board meeting in August, I would ask that you both check in with me if you feel like you have unanswered questions or the workload is significantly more than you thought. And I personally will ask for the resolution to get tabled at that point if that is the case. I just want you to know that.
And Denal just said the same thing. Brenda.
I was just going to say I'm on the county government committee, and I think that we should expect that those questions be answered before the county government committee, if possible. You know, so that the county government committee has the opportunity to feel that the staff has the information they need to make a decision or a recommendation.
Tara.
I just wanted to, for a point of clarification, should I connect? Because I'm going to try and find contacts in Orange County. I actually have a contact in Albany County. They're doing their resiliency planning with a contractor, not through us, but through they got a grant to do their work. Should I connect these folks with Patrice, Wendy, and Jolene? Do you all want to be kind of in email chains with these folks, or is there one of you that wants to take the point on this, or?
Patrice says this affects mostly your department. I will help out in fact finding and gathering for you, if that would help.
And Tara, as a member of county government committee, I'd like to be in that conversation as well.
Sure, absolutely. Great. So I'll get you connected with those other counties, and you can answer for that, get answers from them about what their process looks like, and then also with Connor at Cornell.
And Tara, if you could send, when you come up, when you find a good example that you, could you send that out to the entire task force?
Yeah, and actually, I was just going to mention that the best examples are actually in the document that you sent, that one that's called Climate Adaptation Planning Overview. At the very bottom of that document, there's a bunch of links to existing climate adaptation plans, some of them in state, some of them out of state. I think the in-state ones are probably a better example, but those are going to be the best examples of kind of seeing what it looks like when it's going to come and be done.
Here we go. Right. Exactly. That's great. There are a lot of examples in this document. Some from across the country. So if among those examples, if you think one is most applicable to our county, that would be helpful. If you have any thoughts on that. Any other comments or questions? Thank you all very much for the emergency meeting or special meeting. There's no emergency. Wendy?
Patrice, when is your meeting?
The meeting is next week on the 20th.
On the 20th? Okay.
The information has to go to county government Friday by noon time.
Okay.
Okay.
Sarah, will you forward the information, contact information for Connor from Cornell as soon as you can?
Yes.
So, okay.
Yeah, I'm going to do that all this morning, or probably in an hour or two. So you should get that all very soon. All that content.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Thank you all very much, and I really appreciate the detailed concerns, the very legitimate questions that need to be resolved, and that's why it's great that we have this group of people on this task force, and we're very well informed and benefit greatly from that perspective of where the rubber hits the road. And we appreciate Patrice, Jolene, Wendy. We really appreciate your help on all these projects. So we know that you have a very full plate. So thanks all. Anything else? Okay. Have a great day, everyone, and we'll talk soon.
All right.